We are recording.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yoav Elinevsky. I'm a member of the board of Massachusetts Peace Action and member of the Latin America Solidarity Coalition of Western Massachusetts. Thank you for joining us for this webinar on Venezuela. The webinar is organized by these two organizations, MAPA and the Latin America Solidarity Coalition. And I'm glad to share with you the news that we organize an event in Northampton. We call it a car solidarity rally to end the sanctions in Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, to bail out people, not corporations, and to support Medicare for all, not the military-industrial complex. And to our surprise, this event was covered by the Telesur media outlet in Venezuela and by the Popular Resistance website. And Brian share here show you the page from Telesur. So this is in a way to encourage all of us to continue to go out and rally and encourage other activists to do the same thing and send a message of support to our brothers and sisters in Venezuela, in Cuba, that are suffering from these cruel sanctions. The webinar today will feature my friend Hector Figarella. Hector is a Venezuelan-American. He works as an emergency medical technician in Greenfield. He's very familiar with Venezuela. He's one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about Venezuela. His mother and sister still live there, and he's keeping in touch with them regularly. You know, this is a difficult time, of course, in Venezuela because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the increased US economic, military, and diplomatic pressure on Venezuela by the gangsters in the US government. And therefore, we invited Hector to come and give us an update on what is going on today in Venezuela. So thank you very much, Hector, for joining us. And let's start.
Hi, thank you, Yoav, for the introduction. Thank you for touching on the good news that the car protest was picked up by Telesur English. That's really good news. I want to thank Brian Garvey from Massachusetts Peace Action for hosting this event. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time, and also for acting as our technical support during this. Much appreciated. It is a pleasure to be joining you guys. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It's good to see that people are interested in learning more about what's going on in Venezuela. The situation in Venezuela, as has been ongoing for the past probably over a year. The latest coup attempt that the Trump administration has been trying to perpetrate against the Venezuelan people, the Venezuelan government, since last January 2019, by installing a puppet government under the leadership of a crooked, unpopular, both among the opposition and also among the regular population, general population in Venezuela. Guaido has lost enormous credibility, and even to the point where the United States recently has proposed a transitional plan that included both Maduro and Guaido not running for president, but using a transitional government composed of 6 members that will control the Venezuelan government until elections took place. So that latest move by the Trump administration shows that the Guaido strategy has failed. For those of you joining us who don't know who Juan Guaido is, Juan Guaido was a member of the Venezuelan General Assembly who was the president, the temporary president, 1-year appointment. Once he took control of the assembly that was in contempt of court at the time because they refused to follow a Supreme Court order not to swear in legislators that were under investigation for voter fraud, stemming from the 2018 elections, congressional elections. So Juan Guaido used that opportunity to declare himself president, supported by the Trump administration. It has been ongoing ever since. They had tried different strategies. They tried to force humanitarian aid, trying to start a coup under the pretense of creating a humanitarian corridor. That's what happened in 2019, February 23rd, 2019, where they failed to accomplish that. So the Guaido strategy has been a failure from the beginning. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has also most recently transferred somewhat around $500 million of Venezuelan assets to the to accounts that are under Juan Guaido's control in Washington D.C. and this is also under international law. This is also very illegal, and these are funds that Venezuela could use right now to help in the fight against COVID-19. It's really unfortunate that the Trump administration is operating as a mafia, as gangster. This is modern day gangsterism perpetrated by the Trump administration on the people of Venezuela. It is illegal under international law to have blanketed sanctions on a population, and that's what's happening in Venezuela. The sanctions are killing people. We know that they had killed over 40,000 Venezuelans between 2017 and 2018. So, and Venezuelans are dying. They're dying because of the lack of access to medicines that they need, and also even though the Maduro government is trying very hard to meet the needs of the Venezuelan people, is becoming even more challenging because of they don't have access to the international market. They're shut out of the SWIFT payment system, and the United States allies in Europe, Canada as well, they have frozen assets and they refuse to trade with Venezuela. And also this leaves companies that want to do business with Venezuela. They are afraid to do business with Venezuela because they're afraid that their US-based businesses will be sanctioned by the Trump administration. So the Trump administration has done a good job isolating Venezuela in the financial sense. Venezuela is not alone. It has many allies around the world. Only around 50 countries actually recognize Guaido, but you don't even hear much of Guaido. You don't hear much about Guaido in the U.S. media. It actually has fallen off the record. It's actually been quite embarrassing for the Trump administration. This felt coup attempt. So they had kicked the coup narrative into high gear, most recently by conducting military exercises on the Colombian-Venezuela border with Colombian military special forces. This was prior to the shutdown of the borders due to the Venezuela going into a full shutdown quarantine on March 17th. Also, sending U.S. military vessels off the coast of Venezuela. A Portuguese vessel actually crashed against a Venezuelan Coast Guard last month and sank it. So this is more provocation. There has been violation of Venezuelan airspace by U.S. Military aircrafts. So it's a lot of saber rattling, and I think it is one cannot say for sure that the Trump administration is not naive or crazy enough to attempt a military style operation in Venezuela. Is worrisome. Which brings me to a point with the indictment that took place on March 26th against Maduro and about a dozen of his ministers, including Diosdado Cabello, who is seen as the second in command of the of the Chavismo, or the Socialist Party. They were indicted by the United States State Department on narco-trafficking charges, which are completely bogus. Even to them, it's just not justifiable. There's nothing to back this charges up. So they essentially put a price on Maduro's head of I think I believe it was for $15 million. So this is worrisome because this actually opens up even more possibilities for assassination attempts against Maduro. And there have been several assassination attempts against Maduro and the leadership of the Venezuela, the leftist Chavista Venezuelan government. Last August, they tried to kill Maduro with drones that were loaded with C4 explosives, and it has been proven that the people that were running this operation, this assassination attempt, were trained in Colombia. So Colombia has been a close ally of the U.S. regime, and they carry a lot of water for the U.S. And it's unfortunate. But that's where we are right now. It is known that less than 10%, maybe 5 to 7% of the entire drug traffic that comes into the U.S. goes through Venezuela. Most of it goes through Colombia, Central America, Mexico, and parts of the Caribbean. So it's as far as justifying indicting Maduro for drug trafficking, it doesn't stand a chance in a court of law. But I mean, that's American justice for you right now, unfortunately. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening in Venezuela around the COVID-19 coronavirus. The first cases of coronavirus were detected in Venezuela around sometime around March 13th. There were just the first few cases of coronavirus in Venezuela. When this took place, the Venezuelan government went into high gear and decided to take measures that they decided to follow the Chinese plan of action as far as like trying to combat and control the pandemic so that it wouldn't get out of control. So they instituted, mandating that everybody wear face masks while being outside. And then on March 17th, there was a complete quarantine put into place. So you are not to leave your house unless you are going to get food or medicine. And this has shown to really work in the case of Venezuela. I just wanted to highlight an example. Venezuela, as a country of 33 million people, probably around 30 million people right now, is somewhere around 35 million. But about between 3 and 5 million Venezuelans have left Venezuela because of the horrible economic conditions that people are living under. And they are horrible. They're horrible in many ways. Horrible because of the lack of access to food and medicine. And in some cases, when you are able to find the medicine, you don't have the funds to purchase the medicine because the Venezuelan currency has been crushed and destroyed by coercive actions through black market dollar manipulation that has weakened the Venezuelan bolivar, the Venezuelan currency, the bolivar, to a point where it's worthless. So much of the Venezuelan economy is dollarized. But I wanted to highlight a specific case. In the case of Uruguay, the country of Uruguay has a population of 3.5 million people. And they detected its first cases around the same time as Venezuela. And just to give you an example, Venezuela currently has about 180 cases of COVID-19. 180 for a country of 30 million people. Out of those, over 150 have recovered. And right now, the death toll in Venezuela stands at 10. So Uruguay has twice the number of cases and probably twice the number of dead and for a country of 3.5 million people. And I just wanted to highlight that recently, even in Uruguay, where Uruguay has elected a right-wing president. So he was just elected, unfortunately. So is there a connection between a right-wing government and the fact that, their measures around combating COVID-19 had not been as effective as the one taken by the Venezuelan government? I wanted to highlight also Venezuela. Venezuela is not alone. As Comrade Yoav mentioned, we are here in the Valley. We're doing work, also working with partner organizations in the eastern part of the state. MAPA has been very, very good at convening, also leading the way around pressuring our legislators at the national level around this issue. It's really hard to organize right now and to lobby our legislators because of the social distancing, and it's very difficult. But nonetheless, the car protest was a very positive event. We had a good turnout. But also, so at the international, I think it's, we need to continue to do these things, pressure our legislators, and for those of you joining us at home, to consider doing the same thing, continue supporting and demanding that the sanctions be lifted, and that the Venezuelan people be allowed to determine their own path and their own future. They want to be respected, and they want their independence and their sovereignty intact. Let them determine their own future. Venezuela's not alone with this. Even here in the Valley, here in Massachusetts, we're fighting to make sure that that their voices are heard, and that their suffering is stopped. Just I don't want to say alleviated. I'm not gonna. That the suffering is stopped. The Venezuelan people are hurting, they're suffering, they're dying every day because of these sanctions. These sanctions are a form of warfare. So Venezuela is under attack. The Trump administration is not dropping bombs, but they might as well be dropping bombs, because these sanctions are killing people. They're killing everyday Venezuelans. I personally have lost family members as a consequence of the sanctions. One of my uncles died last year because of complications from malaria, an aggressive form of malaria, drug-resistant malaria, and the medications that were needed to treat him were not available at the time. And this is as a direct consequence of the Trump administration's sanctions against Venezuela. And so Venezuela's inability to pay for these medications, and when they do come in, they're also extremely expensive. But Venezuela's not alone, and we have seen that Russia and China and Iran and Cuba are supporting Venezuela through this crisis. Cuba has sent a medical brigade, and Cuban doctors have been present in Venezuela for a while, since the beginning of the Venezuelan the Bolivarian Revolution, and they're still there. Wanted to highlight, and also Russia and China are sending supplies as well. UNICEF and the World Health Organization have been crucial, for Venezuela to have controlled this pandemic, to have kept it to a level where it has been not out of control. Let's see. As far as the COVID-19, I wanted to talk about how Venezuela went about combating COVID-19. So Venezuela has a database called the Patria, the Homeland database, where they have been using this for a while to institute programs to help everyday Venezuelans that are struggling through the economic crisis. And I believe this was one of the things that was suggested that they do instead of trying to create price controls, put price controls into effect, which they've been having a really hard time controlling prices because of the hyperinflation. One of the things that the Venezuelan government has done is to try to give funds, transfer funds, electronic funds to families that are in most need of these funds. So it will be equivalent of like the electronic food stamps that we have here in Massachusetts or in the U.S. So through this homeland database, Patria database, the Venezuelan government instituted. They took the database and they asked. It has about 20 million people in the database that have actually logged on online and shared their information with the government. They asked the Venezuelan people that were part of this database to, so they tweaked it so that people could log on onto the database and tell you and input data that, you know, if they have symptoms of COVID-19, they were input this in the database. So about 120,000 people logged on and input information that they have flu-like symptoms that might be associated with COVID-19. Out of those 128,000, the Venezuelan government, the Venezuelan doctors, Venezuelan medical personnel, supported by Cuban doctors, have done over 124 house-to-house visits, medical visits. So they're going from house to house, and they're checking people's symptoms, and they're trying to map, trying to clamp down the rate of transmission. You know, who else could have been exposed to the virus. It has proven very effective, extremely. So, I mean, for one of the most populated countries in Latin America to have the least cases is quite remarkable what they done, and it should be commended. The situation is not so great in Colombia and Brazil, so it's still not under control. So until the surrounding countries in Venezuela, you know, that surround Venezuela are not until the COVID-19 cases are not under control in those countries, it's going to be very hard for Venezuela to open up its borders. So it will be, you know, we're still yet to see what's going to happen as far as this is still ongoing and developing. One of the things that were crucial also were what in Venezuela they call centros de diagnóstico integral, which is like community clinics that were set up under one of the plans, one of the missions under the Venezuelan Revolution, under the Bolivarian Revolution, which is basically community clinics where you go and you can get physical an assessment, get blood work done, and also get, you know, get free medication for whatever your ailment is at the time. So these centers that are all over Venezuela were very crucial in controlling the spread of COVID-19. So it's quite remarkable what Venezuela has done in clamping down on COVID-19. Another measure has been the distribution of the CLOP boxes of food, which is shelf-stable foods that the Venezuelan government distributes to about 6 million families. They've been trying to multiply that and try to reach more families that are in need because of the quarantine times that they're living in right now. So, but I just also want to point out that not everybody gets the CLOP boxes on a weekly basis right now. I know this, and so I think the CLOP boxes are reaching millions of Venezuelans that are in dire need, and this is probably, you know, it's better seen in the big cities and also like the poor neighborhoods, like in the barrios where people are in dire need of food staples. So that's one aspect of that as well. Another aspect is that the Venezuelan government has banned the firing of anybody that who's employed. That you may not be fired, and also guaranteeing salaries for 6 months. Also, at the same time, through the Plan Patria, they're giving people funds to purchase food on a periodic basis. Granted, the funds are not enough to purchase, say $100 worth of food, but they are of help to the population. The issue is inflation too. I mean, it's astronomical how expensive things get, and the prices go up every day, and it's linked to the manipulated black market price of the U.S. dollar, who has now taken over the Venezuelan economy. This is something that the Maduro government understands and does not has actually seen it as a way for the Venezuelan people to cope with the crisis a little better because of the money that is flowing into Venezuela from overseas, from Venezuelans who are abroad, who are sending money back home. So this what we're seeing a dollarization in the Venezuelan economy, which is really unfortunate. And it's been happening slowly for about a year now, and everything is priced in dollars. Unfortunately, you'll go to a supermarket and you'll have two lines, one line to pay in bolivares, and another line to pay in dollars, and the line to pay in dollars is always longer. So there's people with access to dollars. Most Venezuelans don't have access to dollars. They still have to stick to their electronic funds because hard cash currency is really hard to get a hold of. So there's a long way. There's a long way to go. Venezuela has been fighting and trying to get its way out of this financial crisis that has been perpetrated by the opposition, sabotaging the economy locally. They have been well funded by the United States government. Probably around the end, about $600 million have been given to the opposition to try to topple the Maduro government, and it has been unsuccessful. So this is U.S. taxpayer dollars going to waste, and that are also causing great harm to the Venezuelan people. This is an enormous crime against humanity. This is illegal. What's happening to the Venezuelan people, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. People are dying every day, and it's illegal what the United States is doing to the Venezuelan people, and they're doing it nonetheless. And they're doing it with the support of their European allies and the U.S. Allied governments in the Americas. And I want to encourage people to speak up on behalf of the Venezuelan people, because they're not alone, but they're also, we're reminded of how powerful the United States government is, especially in the financial sector, that they can just simply shut our government out of the international financial market. I wanted to also say that the IMF, Venezuela formally requested a loan of $5 billion from the International Monetary Fund. $5 billion, and the International Monetary Fund's answer was no. And the money was specifically requested to fight COVID-19. They just needed the money to buy supplies to fight this virus, this deadly virus. And the IMF said, no, we're not giving you the money, even though Venezuela has the means to pay for this money. And the assets that have been frozen around the world. England has $1.3 billion of Venezuelan gold. Portugal has hundreds of millions of dollars of Venezuelan assets frozen. And even here, Citgo gas stations, Citgo refineries in the US have been handed over to Guaido, and that's still tied up in the courts. So we have yet to determine what's going to happen with that. While on the ground in Venezuela, people who are working are the essential personnel, just like you see here in the US. We're talking about medical, military. Those are the ones who are allowed to buy gasoline. There's a huge shortage of gasoline in Venezuela right now. So your average citizen cannot buy gasoline. They're selling it, but they're selling it with a special permit to people who need to get to work. So that has basically paralyzed has damaged the Venezuelan economy even further. That this virus has. Obviously, the price, the dropping international market of oil has also had a devastating effect on Venezuela. The sanctioning of companies that deal with Venezuela in the oil market by the U.S. has also had a negative effect. I know that India has decided to cave to U.S. pressure and stop purchasing Venezuelan oil. So the price of oil has crashed, has to a new low, and this has has created made the situation even worse for the Venezuelan government trying to access funds that they need to support the Venezuelan people, to take care of the Venezuelan people. So that's what's ongoing on the ground. People do see that I would say like over 80%, about 80. There was a poll, about 80% of the Venezuelan people support Maduro's actions around the COVID-19 crisis and the pandemic. So he's being recognized even among the opposition that his measures have been beneficial to Venezuelans overall, whether you're an opposition member or a Chavista. So the Venezuelan people they do recognize that you might not like Maduro, but he's managed the situation really well, and they deserve credit for it. They've done a magnificent job at handling a very dangerous crisis. They have saved a lot of lives when you consider what's happening around the world and the numbers of deaths around the world and the number of deaths of countries that saw this coming when Venezuela saw this coming. Yeah, as far as sending, I wanted to just point out how hard it is for the Venezuelan people right now. Um, People send money to Venezuela from abroad, and so they either send the money through electronic means, and then the people they're able to exchange bolivares for the dollars that they're sending from abroad. And this has become even harder now. It's hard to find people that are able to buy the dollars that you want to send to your family, and that's because of the further slowdown of the Venezuelan economy due to this virus, to COVID-19. Uh, uh, Also, I wanted to I left something out earlier. I mentioned about the indictments against Maduro and his ministers, and it was interesting to see the former Venezuelan general Cliver Alcala was also named as one of the people indicted by the United States government. But what's really interesting is that Alcala was actually in Colombia planning another coup attempt that included the assassination of Maduro, and actually Colombian forces were able to seize a shipment of weapons, rifles, assault rifles destined for Venezuela. And so after Alcala was indicted, he actually, it makes no sense that you will indict somebody that's trying to help you topple the Maduro government. Alcala confessed to this crime. He said, "Yeah, and I was in charge of the operation. I was in charge of purchasing the weapons. Juan Guaido gave me the money. I signed a contract with Juan Guaido about the situation." So somebody messed up. Somebody in the State Department messed up and included Alcala's name in the indictment. That's the level of, I guess, incompetence from the Trump administration around trying to topple the Venezuelan government. So it's just another clear sign of how the opposition is trying, and the Trump administration is trying to topple the Venezuelan government, and they're not going to stop. Elliot Abrams, a former a war criminal, he's a war criminal from the days of the Contras and the death squads. His nickname was Abrams Death Squad. Elliot Death Squad Abrams was his one of his nicknames. So this is the monster in charge of the Venezuela affairs in Washington. So he's a very dangerous individual. He has no respect for the law, and he will stop at nothing to have what they call regime change in Venezuela. So I wanted to just highlight that as well. These are dangerous individuals. They have no regards to the rule of law, and they're still trying to create regime change at the expense of lives. People are dying in Venezuela, and I want to keep saying that people are dying every day. People are dying because of U.S. actions, U.S. government actions. Let's make that distinction. It's the United States government, our leadership in government, who is doing this to the Venezuelan people, and Venezuelans are not exempt from this. I think it's like a quarter of the world population is under U.S. sanctions. So sanctions are a new form of warfare, hybrid warfare. They call it un golpe suave. So it's a soft coup, but it's not so soft because it's costing lives. See, we have 140 right now. Yoa, do you have anything to add? I don't know if you want, or as far as jumping into questions and answers.
I would say let's go to the questions. Thank you very much, Hector, for a fantastic presentation, and let's have a conversation. So please, everybody, feel free to send us messages on the chat, and Brian will handle the question and answer part of this webinar. Thank you very much, Brian.
Well, thank you, Yoav, and thank you, Hector, for that fantastic presentation. Just to let all our audience members know that if you do have a question for Hector or for Yoav, you can share it either in the chat or you can use the Q&A button, which is on the bottom of your screen, just to the left of center. I'll be monitoring both. So we have a few questions that are already in. Hector, what is the current relations between Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil? And what is the status of the peace agreement between the FARC and the Colombian government? If you feel up to answering that one.
Okay. So, I mean, unfortunately, Brazil has had a right-wing fascist president for quite some time now, in I think a few years now. So Bolsonaro is an individual that has openly stated that he believes that Maduro needs to go. But I also wanted to point out that within Brazil, I don't think there is a wide support among the population to attack Venezuela militarily, and also within the military. When this crisis started last year, a high-ranking member of the Brazilian government military clearly stated that Brazil would not be used as a staging ground for military invasion against Venezuela. So, and I think the logic behind that is because if you allow this to happen, this is something that could become something that any country could be at risk of invasion. And also, you don't want to set a precedent that you want to have fellow countries in the region attacking each other militarily. We definitely don't want that. As far as the Colombia peace, the Colombian relationships between Venezuela and Colombia relationships have been very poor. Venezuela and Colombia have a long history, and right now President Duque, who is seen as, it's obvious he's President Duque's mentor has been Álvaro Uribe, who has been well documented, was a narco-trafficker. He was president of Colombia some years back, and he was very adamant about starting conflicts with Venezuela, and he was very much wanting to start a war against Chavez when Hugo Chavez was in power, and he was not able to accomplish that dream of his. But Duque is seen as a puppet of Uribe. So Duque being in control, being president of Colombia, is seen as might as well Uribe being president of Colombia, because Uribe has complete control of what Ivan Duque does. So their relationships have been very poor. Venezuela has stated over and over again his willingness. Maduro has stated his willingness to have diplomacy and to work with Colombia. He also has been very clear about how sad it is that Colombia is basically a United States colony. They have 7 military bases. The United States has 7 military bases in Colombia. One of the military bases is within 10 kilometers of the Venezuelan border. So clearly a threat to the Venezuelan people. As a sign of solidarity and good gesture, Maduro offered to donate 2 COVID-19 testing machines that were donated by the Chinese government to Venezuela. So out of that donation shipment, Maduro asked, because there was only one machine doing tests for COVID-19 for all of Colombia. This was a couple of weeks ago. Maduro offered two of those machines to Colombia so they could do more testing, and Ivan Duque refused the donation. So there's a level of animosity and lack of cooperation, devious, and it's unfortunate. Colombia is controlled by the oligarchs. Colombia is controlled by the right wingers. And as far as the relationship between the FARC and the Colombian government, I'm not extremely well versed on that subject, but I do know that they signed a peace agreement that was convened in La Habana, a process that was started in the time where Chavez was in office, and Hugo Chavez was very adamant about finding peace in Colombia, and he encouraged this dialogue to take place. We cannot give Chavez credit for there being like full credit, but he was an integral part of those talks starting. I think the Venezuelan government and the FARC did talk, and I think Chavez probably has something to do with them coming to the table and sitting down. The peace agreement was signed, but the Colombian government has not been good at following through. The FARC is now a political party within Colombia, a legit political party. But one thing that we're seeing that has happened recently, and it continues to happen since the peace agreement was signed, is that there has been continuous assassination of former FARC members. So this is happening. This is not just social justice organizers, social justice leaders that are being assassinated in Colombia. There's also FARC members are being assassinated. So the peace process is very fragile in Colombia. And I think this is another aspect why a military incursion from Colombia into Venezuela, even though it makes sense to the most radical minds in Washington, to the most hawkish, draconian minds in Washington that see the Venezuelan oil and gold as the ultimate jackpot. It's something that it's not feasible. It's not feasible to have an armed conflict with Colombia and Venezuela because it will spread out of control, and you will create an enormous wave of refugees coming over the border, our southern border. You will have probably hundreds of thousands of refugees coming over the border, and never mind being able to control Venezuela. You will need a few 100,000 troops, and you probably never control Venezuela. It will be like Iraq, 2.0 or worse. So, and it will be right in your backyard. It wouldn't be 10,000 miles away in the Middle East. So this situation is developing, and it's difficult to predict what's going to happen as far as the Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela relations. I think the best chance is for Lula, da Silva to, or someone like him in the left to take power, and for relations just to improve. But there has been, we saw in the early 2000s, a huge left wave taking over Latin America, from Kirchner in Argentina, Correa in Ecuador, Evo in Bolivia, even Uruguay, Mujica in Uruguay, and now Uruguay having a right-wing government, but also Brazil, having Lula in Brazil, Nicaragua. So we had a huge, wave of left moving through Latin America, and then the powers that be in Washington saw this as a huge threat, obviously, and they decided to push back, and they have pushed back extremely hard. And we have seen the results of that pushback, trying to crush that left wave that was taking over the Americas. Lula was sent to jail. Dilma was taken out of power. Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, and now we have a right-wing Bolsonaro in power, who shouldn't have won, but he's there now. And then we have the president of Ecuador, who is now just completely did a 180 on the citizen revolution, la revolución ciudadana that Correa started. So I think we have yet to be seen. It's important to point out that the Venezuelan model works. Venezuela's economy was the fastest growing economy in the early 2000s. It was just on fire. It was just going great. And then how do you explain that from from the fastest growing economy to now not having an economy that has been completely collapsed, has been crushed and destroyed by a very powerful foreign power, imperialist foreign power. So the Venezuelan model, the socialist model, taking care of people and planet first works. Building 3 million homes, and taking care of the people, education, healthcare, the basics. Like what really matters. So the Venezuelan model, in the eyes of neoliberalism, of capitalism, predatory capitalism, needs to be destroyed, needs to be erased from the face of the earth. That's how they see it. That's why they're going so hard, and that's why they don't care how many Venezuelans they kill in the process. They want to destroy the Venezuelan model.
Thank you, Hector. I want to move on right to the next question. Could you talk a little bit more about what the impacts of the dollarization of the Venezuelan economy have been, and what the effects have been on the people, and specifically how it drives the inflation of the bolivar?
Yeah, this is one of those things that is hard for your regular people to. I mean, like, I'm not an economist, and I have a hard time understanding how hyperinflation to this level takes place. The Maduro government decided they were in the midst of the crisis last year. They were clamping down on businesses that were selling items priced in U.S. dollars, and then the bolivar, the Venezuelan currency, was crushed to a point where it's just you needed to carry like a whole sack of bolivares in cash just to buy a pound of cheese, and just to that level of destruction of the bolivar. So everything's priced in dollars, and the Maduro government has allowed it to have it, so you can pay in euros, you can pay in dollars, you can pay in pesos, Colombian pesos. So there is a lot of flexibility in different forms of payment, and they have allowed this to happen to ease the burden on the Venezuelan people. Unfortunately, most Venezuelans don't have access to dollars. Most Venezuelans don't have family abroad sending money back home. So people are having a hard time. They're still getting their pension, they're still getting their salary, but because of hyperinflation, it goes less. That your salary goes less and less. So yeah, people are not starving to death, but people are not eating a well-balanced diet. That's the bottom line. So, and you see it on the streets. I see it with family members who I see that have lost weight because they're not having the proper caloric intake. There's a website called Dollar Today that somehow manipulates the price of the dollar in Venezuela. So based on this website, business owners, or whoever is selling or buying dollars, will determine how they're gonna price their items that are gonna sell to the general public, how they're gonna sell the dollars that they're selling, how they're gonna purchase the dollars they're gonna sell, at what price, based on this website called Dollar Today. And I heard that it's been run by a former Venezuelan resident. So he lives, I believe he lives in Texas. So it's impossible for the bolivar to keep up, because it just keeps, the price of the dollar keeps going up and up, and then you'll see a price of an item today for X amount of bolivares, and the following day it goes up 20-30%, and it's directly linked to the dollar prices that are priced in the dark in the black market. So yeah, it has had a negative impact on people's access, buying power in Venezuela. Venezuelans have a hard time affording the things that they need to survive on. Never mind luxury items, never mind spendable income. They don't have that, like any kind of money that you get your hands on, it goes directly to food or medicine. That's the focus. It's that level. So it kind of makes you wonder what it does to the psyche of a population when you're under this much level of chaos and attack. It's warfare. It's just a different form of warfare that most people, that we're not used to. But nonetheless, it is. So it's affecting people negatively. But what it has done also, it has shown that the Venezuelan people are very resilient, and they're also very, very proud people that are willing to fight through this. They know, they're aware. Great majority of the population that supports the government understands. This is something that Hugo Chavez was very good at, was awakening the consciousness of the Venezuelan people. He knew that the Bolivarian process would not survive with just one person leading it. He understood the power of waking up the masses and letting them, so that it will be a collective effort. You can't just rest on the shoulders of one person. And that's what we're seeing. That's why the comunas have been so successful, taking care of each other and growing food. So there's a hyperdrive to become self-sufficient around food creation. It is unfortunate that not so much how that's playing out right now with the COVID-19 crisis, but corruption has always been a huge problem in Venezuela, and I think that's one of the main obstacles that get in the way of implementing the socialist programs and like growing food. Because even before this crisis, when the Venezuelan government would allocate farmland to a farmer and give him a credit to buy the tractor, give him the seeds, and give him the training. And then once the crop was harvested, then a lot of farmers were like, well, if I sell this on the Venezuelan market, I'm going to get, $10. But if I drive it across the border in Colombia or Brazil, I'm going to make 3-4 times as much. So there has been a huge problem, is clamping down on this kind of corruption, and the exodus of Venezuelan goods. Yeah, just to point out real quick, the city of Cucuta, which lies on the border with Venezuela, I mean, I would say 60 to 70% of their economy is considered an extraction economy. Like they survive of extracting goods from Venezuela. So one example, I'll be quick. It's like before the crisis, Venezuela has always had the cheapest gasoline in Latin America. So you could fill up your SUV for probably under 10 cents US, think about that, 10, 20 cents, you fill up your tank. So it's always been like a symbolic payment, because even for Venezuelans, it's like, it's like going up to, your gas station on the street, and then you fill up your tank, and they'll tell you it's 5 cents, it's like, it was that level of like, wow, it's basically free gasoline. So what people were doing, one of the things people were doing in Cucuta was, they would drive their cars from Colombia into Venezuela, fill up the tank, and then drive back into Colombia and sell the tank for for whatever, so you have a nice profit at the end of the day. You only have to drive into Venezuela once. So you could sustain your family by doing that, and people will carry the gasoline illegally. Venezuelan government for many years through the revolution has subsidized food, basic staple items, like maize, the corn dough that is used for arepas, the Venezuelan staple food. So those items, it got to a point you couldn't find them on the streets because they were subsidized in Venezuela, but they're also popular in Colombia. So they would just go across the border, and people would make profits from that. So it's an extraction economy. So Venezuela's economy being crushed like that, has also affected a lot of Colombians living along the Venezuelan border that benefited from the Venezuelan economy. So it has affected both countries.
Thanks, and that actually leads well into this next question, because you mentioned the communes. What has been the role of the communes in fighting this kind of inflation and leading to more self-sufficiency? And could you talk a little bit more about how they're responding to the COVID crisis as well?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Colombians, specifically their roles in fighting COVID-19, I think I might have missed a piece in that question, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was about the communes and their efforts.
Okay.
Yeah. in their efforts to promote self-sufficiency and also their role in fighting the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, I think I mean, as far as fighting COVID-19, I think people are being very good at following the quarantine rules, which is like stay home, don't leave your house unless you absolutely have to leave, and you're allowed to go to work, but you have to wear your face mask. You have to you're allowed to obviously go grocery shopping and go to the pharmacies. So I mean, the communists have been very good at organizing neighborhoods, and also around gardens and growing their own food. And it's not to the level where it needs to be, where as far as self-sufficiency, but it has filled a very important gap. And they do this with pride. They understand that they're under attack. They understand the need to come together and work together because of because they're the Venezuelan socialist model works, and that's why it's under attack. So I think around their efforts around COVID-19, and I don't have anything specific about that because people are being encouraged. I think the one piece that I knew the communists are doing is that they're helping with the distribution of the CLAP food boxes. So they're helping. They're already organized in their neighborhoods, so the government via transport trucks, delivers the boxes to the communes, and then members of the commune who are well organized will go ahead and distribute the food boxes to the community. So that to that level, that's how they're involved. It's just distributing food. Yeah.
Thanks, Hector. I just have a couple more questions for you, and I wanted to save these for the end because they're about actions that people can take, that audience members can take. What are current actions that folks can take, not only to end the sanctions, but also to work to release Venezuela's money that has been frozen around the world? You talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, we want to encourage people who are following the crisis in Venezuela to share the knowledge that they're gaining. Talk to your family members, talk to your neighbors about it, but also not just share the knowledge, but also try to take action around contacting your legislators, because they even though they're hard to move on these topics, they do take your phone calls. So I think the more people that call, the more people that demand that the sanctions be lifted, the more people that stress the fact that innocent people are dying, and that the United States government's actions are illegal, and that people are dying because of these actions. I think people need to accentuate these things and let our legislators know that this is wrong and that it needs to change. So demand that they move on this. So I think right now it's hard because we cannot like go out and protest like the way we used to, and congregate the way we used to. But there are different things that you can do. The car protest was something that we just did, and it was well attended, and it got media coverage. So when you hear of things like that coming up in the future, consider showing up. Consider showing up because it matters and it counts. Even if it's just you, if you can't get somebody else to go with you, it goes a long way. Solidarity goes a long way. So we need more that international solidarity. Internationalism is the way to go moving forward. So it'd be great to see what other organizations are doing around the world around standing up for Venezuela. I know people care around the world, but we don't get to hear it much around here. Representative Ilan Omar has a bill in Congress, 5879. I believe is the number of the bill that we've been encouraging our legislators to push to sign on to this bill, including McGovern, Warren, and Markey. So definitely try to get involved as much as you can. As you learn, share the knowledge that you're learning with your friends and loved ones.
Thanks, Hector. I just want to ask one final question, a good one that just came in. Uh, what efforts are being made in Venezuela to try and diversify the economy to make it more self-sufficient? Rather, as you were saying, that the cratering oil prices are really hitting Venezuela hard. Do you know of any efforts that are being made to diversify the economy to protect them against this?
Ways to diversify the economy to protect them
against falling oil prices that are really affecting them.
Yeah, this is something that Venezuela has struggled since oil was discovered in the early 20th century. It has been ongoing. This is something that I grew up listening to politicians talk about this. They need to diversify. They need to not depend on oil. So Venezuela forever has depended on over 90% of his revenues from the sale of oil, and even to this point, that's still the case. I think one of the things that the Maduro government has done, they understand, they know the need to diversify. They understand that it's been really hard for them to do that. I think this crisis, the coup attempt, and the pandemic has shown that they really need to get their act together around food production. Venezuela has plenty of water and plenty of land, so I think they have kicked that into high gear. So they're growing more food, and they're encouraging they're encouraging community gardens, they're encouraging house gardens. So in that respect, is following the model that Cuba followed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Cuba was in really, they were having trouble with food access because they were used to receiving help from the Soviets, and they got very good at growing food. So I think that's something that is ongoing right now in Venezuela, and they're getting better at it. Another aspect is they're mining more aggressively for gold in Venezuela. So and as we can see, more and more countries around the world are switching their currencies a lot. They're switching a lot of their some portion of their war reserves to gold, like actual gold on hand that you can use to purchase goods and services. So gold production has increased drastically in Venezuela. Unfortunately, this comes also as a detriment to the environment. Gold extraction in Venezuela is an ugly process. I know that some concessions have been given to Chinese mining companies. I think one Chinese mining company will be doing a lot of production, a lot of mining around gold and other precious minerals. But also there's also a lot of illegal activity around gold production. This leads to the destruction of the environment. I mean, you're talking about clearing big swaths of land just to find gold, and also one of the horrible byproducts of the gold production is mercury. Mercury is used to extract it, and so it's huge. It's a huge problem, water contamination. So yeah, definitely. The Venezuelan government has also before the coup, they were trying really hard to to encourage more tourism to Venezuela. So tourism, gold production, more food production, but also technological areas. They're looking to advance as far as making like actual technological items like that they can sell to the open market. But that all of that has slowed down because you don't have access to the international. They don't have access to the international market right now. But they do understand the need to diversify. It has been a problem for decades. They need to diversify the economy. They have been very unsuccessful at it.
Thanks, Hector. For the rest of the time, I would like to turn it over to you and to Yoav as well to sort of have the last word, but also to answer this, which is the most important question. What's the work that is being done locally to fight against the U.S. sanctions and coup attempts of the U.S. government? and how can people get involved? I know you talked a little bit about that, but I think it bears repeating. So I'd just like to turn it over to both of you and just say thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yeah, would you
Thank
like to
you,
jump
Brian.
in?
Yeah, I would like to add that I think that people might be more sensitive and caring now because we are all fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think this is an opportunity to highlight the barbarity of the sanction at the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is not just that I hope that people are more caring and sympathetic, but it is also a question of we are all in it together. You cannot be safe in one country while in another next country the pandemic is going crazy. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to highlight the crime, the criminality of the sanctions. Also, the gangsters in the US government, and I'm using the characterization that Chomsky recently made, and as we know, he is a person who is choosing his word very carefully. So the gangsters in our government are taking advantage of the pandemic to push their criminal agenda. We need to step up our activism. I think that, as Hector said, it goes hand to hand. Activism in our communities and pressuring our federal representative to end the sanctions and also start to prepare for the future, hopefully influence it so it will be a different path from the way we have been going so far. So I want to encourage people to join MAPA, to join the Latin America working group of MAPA, to join the Latin America Solidarity Coalition of Western Mass, create the and be active. It is also will be healthy for us as we are stuck at home. It will be healthy for us to be active, to feel that we can still push a progressive agenda. And the technology, the Zoom and so on, gives us opportunity to connect with people far away. I suggest that we should think globally, not just locally in our community, as Hector mentioned. So I just wanted to share with you my thought. I want to thank Hector and Brian for being with us. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward for more such meetings in the future. So thank you everybody for joining our webinar, and join us, please. We need all the help we can get, and I'm looking forward to meet with you and work with you.
Thank you, Yoav. Yeah, thank you, Brian, for hosting. And yeah, I mean, definitely, just reiterating what Yoav just said, just, share the knowledge, get involved. It matters. It really matters. Lives are at stake. People are dying, and this is high-level crimes against humanity that are taking place. So, and your involvement, your support goes a long way, and it matters. So, thank you. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us, and all of you guys online watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
All right, you will be receiving a follow-up email from us on ways that you can get involved, ways you can join us, and a recording of this video. Because as Hector said, share the knowledge that you've gained. It makes a huge difference. Thank you all, and we'll see you again very soon.
All right.
Bye-bye, and peace.
Peace.